Hello, everybody. This is Steve Yoder. Welcome to week 14, the very last week in Legal Studies 246, the legal environment of business here in the summer of 2018 at the UAB Collat School of Business. This week we are looking at the organization of businesses. You can see here the activities in Module 14. Let's look first at the subject of organizing a business, creating some sort of legal entity, perhaps, when you organize a business. Here are the learning activities for business organizations. There are two separate sets of narrated slides here going back to chapter 11 in the textbook. There's a lot of content in organizing a business, so I have split the material into two sets of narrated slides. When an entrepreneur, that is someone who is thinking about forming a business, is thinking about that, he or she has to decide what form his or her business will take. And here are the four choices that we will be talking about. We will also be talking about the concept of a franchise. A franchise is not a form of organization for a business. Rather, it is a method of operating your business. And I can guarantee you that that concept is going to be a question in the question pool for the last exam. For a startup business today, the most common form of organization would be a limited liability company, which is sometimes known as an LLC. LLCs have certain advantages, including that you get the best of both worlds, that you have a veil against liability that we will be talking about, and that the entity is not separately taxed. Now, this is one area where President Trump has made a big difference. He has lowered the corporate tax rate, and the need to create an LLC to avoid separate corporate taxation altogether. Remember, you're still taxed at the personal level if you have an LLC. President Trump has made a big change here. A corporation has shareholders. The shareholders own the corporation. In exchange for not having liability for what might go wrong at the corporation, the shareholders give up the right to participate in day-to-day management. Sometimes that is hard for people who own a corporation to understand. They do get to take part in some fundamental changes that might be proposed for the corporation, such as a merger. As I said, shareholders do not have liability in most cases for what might go wrong at a corporation. However, that liability can disappear if the corporation has not really operated itself like a corporation, and the Internal Revenue Service is an expert at piercing through a corporate veil and holding the individual shareholders liable for the corporation's taxes. Here's another example that we'll be talking about of the corporate veil being pierced. Here's a peek at an actual question from the question pool about piercing the corporate veil. Stop, look at this, because you're going to zip right through that question if you get it on your third exam. A very important concept that applies to the operation of a corporation is that the directors get the great protection of the business judgment rule, which basically says that the directors cannot be individually liable for things that go wrong at the corporation as long as they were very diligent in making their decisions. Moving on to investor protection. This is a body of law that applies when a corporation or some other business, usually a corporation, has sold ownership shares to the public. Businesses began to sell shares to the public well before the stock market crash of 1929, but that event showed that those investors did not know very much about the businesses that they were investing in, and as a result of the stock market crash, a variety of new laws were passed, including the Securities Act of 1933 that defined what a security is. If you are going to issue securities to the public, you have to file what's called a registration statement with the Securities and Exchange Commission with a great deal of information about your company so that we don't have the problem that existed before the stock market crash of 29. Here's the registration from Facebook's initial public offering of its common stock several years ago. Finally, here is the calendar for the semester ended August 10, 2018. You can see that a great many things are coming due on Friday, August 10, including importantly the third and last exam that will be opening the day before, but it will be closing on Friday, August 10 at 11:59 p.m. I congratulate all of you for your hard work in this course, and I wish you all the best of luck in your professional careers.